All right, so we are diving right into this deep dive, and it's all about speaking English naturally.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. So I know that you out there listening are really looking to kind of level up your spoken English.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like you've already absorbed a lot of the basics.
Yeah.
You've even shared with us a podcast episode, which is titled How to Improve Spoken English Naturally.
Perfect.
Smart move. I think this will be a really good one to kind of dissect and really extract the good stuff.
Yeah. It sounds like you are ready to move past textbook English and into the realm of like authentic, fluent conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that leap from understanding to actually speaking that can feel really, really tricky.
Right.
The podcast episode that you shared hits on some common roadblocks, like the fear of making mistakes or getting stuck translating in your head.
Yeah.
I bet you've experienced a few of these yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are classic hurdles that people face. But what's fascinating about this podcast episode is that it doesn't dwell on the problems. It jumps right into solutions.
Oh. And it starts with this really empowering idea, prioritizing communication over perfection.
Okay. I'm intrigued now. I've always been a bit of a grammar geek. So is this podcast suggesting that we just throw grammar rules out the window?
Not entirely, but they make a really compelling point about how native speakers, when we're listening to someone, we're prioritizing understanding over, flawless grammar.
Right.
Think about it. When you hear someone speaking with an accent, are you focusing on their grammar or are you trying to understand the message?
Yeah, good point. I'm usually just trying to follow along with what they're saying.
Exactly.
But I guess I wonder, doesn't focusing solely on communication risk, cementing bad habits?
That's a valid concern. It is a delicate balance.
Yeah.
The podcast host even shares this anecdote about forgetting, complex grammar structures mid-conversation.
Okay.
Their point is that even native speakers don't always speak perfectly.
Yeah.
Fluency often trumps flawless grammar, especially in casual settings. So it's more about getting the message across than, sounding like a textbook. But how do we actually put this into practice?
That's where the daily speaking habit comes in.
Right.
This podcast episode hammers this point home. Mm-hmm. And I completely agree with that. They suggest, talking to yourself, even if it feels a bit silly at first.
Right.
Describe your day. Narrate what you're doing. Anything to get those vocal cords vibrating in English.
Yeah, I admit I've tried that before, and I always feel a little self-conscious.
Yeah.
The podcast also mentioned recording yourself, right?
Yes, recording yourself is like having an instant replay of your speech.
Okay.
You can catch those little hesitations or pronunciation quirks you might not notice otherwise.
Right.
And hey, if you feel awkward talking to yourself, just pretend you're on an important phone call.
Love that excuse.
Just, got to close this deal.
Yeah,
now.
Exactly.
It's like giving yourself permission to practice.
Right.
Without feeling judged.
I like that.
Yeah. They also suggest using voice typing on your phone.
Oh, yeah.
It's a sneaky way to practice your pronunciation because you can see if the phone accurately transcribes what you're saying.
Yeah, that's great for solo practice. But what about taking it to that next level?
That's where shadowing comes in.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this.
Think of it as language karaoke.
Okay.
You pick an English audio clip, could be a podcast, a YouTube video, whatever grabs you, and you basically try to mimic the speaker's pronunciation, their rhythm, even their tone.
So it's not just about understanding the words, it's like absorbing the music of the language.
Precisely. And it helps you break free from that robotic textbook way of speaking.
Yeah.
Instead of overthinking grammar, you're tuning your ear to the natural flow of English.
But isn't there a risk of just like copying someone else's style?
Right.
How do we develop our own voice through this shadowing technique?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Think of shadowing as laying the foundation. You're internalizing those building blocks of natural pronunciation and intonation. But as you practice, you'll naturally start to adapt those elements to your own personality and style.
So it's like learning to dance. You start by imitating.
Yes.
But eventually you kind of develop your own unique flow and rhythm.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It highlights the importance of, finding that sweet spot between mimicking native speakers and letting your own personality shine through.
Right.
And speaking of finding your voice, the podcast also emphasizes the power of using phrases and expressions over rigidly following grammar rules.
Yeah, this feels like a shortcut to sounding more natural.
It is.
Give me some examples.
Absolutely. The podcast contrasts phrases like, I don't get it, versus I do not understand.
Right.
Or that's awesome, versus That is very good.
Okay.
It's about ditching the textbook formality and embracing the way native speakers actually talk.
Yeah, it's like the difference between wearing a stiff suit and slipping into a comfy pair of jeans.
Yeah.
But how do we know which phrases to use? It feels overwhelming.
That's where consistent exposure to real English comes in.
Okay.
The more you listen to native speakers, whether it's in movies, podcasts, or real conversations, the more these phrases will seep into your subconscious.
Right.
You'll start to notice the patterns and naturally incorporate them into your own speech.
So it's about training our ears to recognize those little linguistic gems.
Yes.
But what if we don't have access to, a lot of native speakers in our daily lives? Can we still get those real-world interactions?
Absolutely. The podcast suggests online language groups,
Okay.
language exchange apps, even AI chatbots.
Oh, wow.
While nothing beats a face-to-face chat,
Right.
these tools offer a low-pressure space to practice and experiment with those phrases you're learning.
Okay, I'm definitely adding those to my toolkit.
Please do.
So we've talked about practicing daily shadowing, embracing phrases. What's the next game changer?
This one might sound a bit out there, but it's potentially the most transformative thinking in English.
Whoa, okay, that sounds intense. Isn't that something that just happens naturally over time?
It can,
Yeah.
but the podcast argues that actively cultivating this habit can drastically accelerate your progress.
Okay.
Imagine your thoughts as a highway.
Okay.
Right now, you're driving down the native language lane, making a pit stop at the translation booth, and then merging onto the English lane.
Uh-huh.
It's a slow, bumpy ride.
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
So how do we switch lanes and start cruising down that English highway?
Start small.
Okay.
Narrate your actions in English. I'm brushing my teeth. I'm making coffee.
Yeah.
Ugh, I'm stuck in traffic.
Right.
It might feel strange at first,
Yeah.
but the more you do it, the faster those mental translations will fade away.
So it's like rewiring our brains to default to English.
Exactly.
What about more complex thoughts? How do we handle those?
Baby steps.
Okay.
Start by making simple decisions in English. Instead of thinking, should I buy this shirt in your native language?
Right.
Ask yourself that question in English.
Got it.
Gradually, you'll be able to handle more intricate thoughts without that mental translation detour.
This is blowing my mind. So thinking in English isn't just some vague concept. It's an actionable skill that we can actually develop.
Exactly. It's like building a mental muscle.
Right.
The more you flex it, the stronger it gets.
I like that.
And here's the beautiful part. The faster you think in English, the faster and more naturally you'll be able to speak it.
Yeah, it's like you're removing the middleman from the communication process.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm sold. Thinking in English is officially my new obsession.
I knew you'd catch the vision.
Yeah.
But remember, it's a process.
Right.
Be patient with yourself. Start small and celebrate those little wins along the way.
Yeah, this is such a great reminder that improving spoken English isn't just about cramming grammar rules. It's about rewiring our thinking and habits.
Absolutely.
I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this deep dive.
You're right. We've uncovered a ton already, but there's still so much more to explore.
Can't wait to keep digging in part 2.
Let's do it. Welcome back to our deep dive, all about speaking English naturally.
It's remarkable how thinking in English can be such a game changer.
I know, right?
It's like we've been handed the keys to unlock a whole new level of fluency.
Yeah.
But in the last part, we kind of touched on the idea of active listening.
Right.
How does that tie into this whole thinking in English concept?
That's a great question. Active listening is like providing the fuel for your thinking in English engine.
Okay.
When you immerse yourself in the sounds of native English, movies, podcasts, even eavesdropping on conversations in a non-creepy way, of course,
Right.
you're essentially feeding your brain with the raw materials it needs. Start thinking in English more naturally.
So it's not just about passively hewing the language. It's about actively absorbing those rhythms and patterns.
Yes.
It's like training your ear to become a natural language processor.
Exactly. And this ties back to our earlier conversation about ditching the textbook
Right.
and embracing real-world English.
Yeah.
The more you listen to how native speakers actually use the language, the more you'll internalize those nuances and instinctively use them in your own speech.
Okay, that makes sense. But I have to admit, sometimes I feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of idioms and colloquialisms that native speakers use.
Sure.
It's like they're speaking a secret code.
I hear you. It can feel like a linguistic jungle out there.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. You don't need to memorize every single idiom or slang term.
Okay.
Focus on the ones that resonate with you that you find yourself hearing frequently.
So it's more about quality over quantity.
Absolutely. And here's a little trick. When you encounter a new idiom,
Okay.
don't just try to memorize its definition, try to visualize it.
Oh.
Create a mental picture that connects the words to their meaning.
Okay.
It's like creating a mini movie in your mind.
Oh, I like that it's like turning those abstract expressions into something tangible and memorable.
It's good. For example, let's take the idiom, spill the beans.
Okay.
Instead of just remembering that it means reveal a secret,
Right.
imagine someone literally spilling a bag of beans, and those beans represent the secrets tumbling out.
That's brilliant. It's like giving those idioms a personality, making them less intimidating and more accessible.
Exactly. And the more you practice this visualization technique, the more naturally those idioms will flow into your conversations.
This is making me realize that speaking English naturally isn't just about mastering grammar and vocabulary. It's about tapping into that creative, playful side of language.
You hit the nail on the head, and that playfulness extends beyond just words.
Okay.
We can't forget about the importance of nonverbal communication.
Yes, body language. It's like the secret sauce that adds flavor to our spoken words. But I've always wondered, how much does nonverbal communication really differ across cultures?
It's a fascinating area. Some differences are subtle, like the amount of personal space people prefer. In some cultures, standing close is a sign of warmth.
Yeah.
While in others, it can feel invasive.
Right. And I've heard the eye contact can be tricky too.
Absolutely.
In some cultures, it's considered rude, while in others, it's a sign of respect.
Exactly. These cultural variations can lead to misunderstandings, especially for language learners who might be unintentionally sending mixed signals.
So how do we navigate this nonverbal minefield? Do we need to become experts in every culture's body language?
That would be quite the undertaking.
Yeah.
The key is to be observant and adaptable.
Okay.
Pay attention to how people interact in the English-speaking context you're in. Notice those subtle cues like eye contact gestures and personal space.
It's like becoming a cultural detective, observing and deciphering those nonverbal clues.
Precisely. And as you become more attuned to these nuances, you'll naturally start to adjust your own nonverbal communication style.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot between respecting your own cultural background and adapting to the norms of the English-speaking world.
This is making me realize that speaking English naturally goes beyond just language. It's about cultural intelligence as well.
Absolutely. And I think this ties back beautifully to the concept of finding your own voice in English. It's not about erasing your cultural identity. It's about weaving it into the fabric of your spoken language, creating a unique tapestry of communication that reflects who you truly are.
That's such a powerful image. So it's not about trying to sound like a carbon copy of a native speaker. It's about embracing your individuality and letting your personality shine through.
Exactly. And this process of finding your voice can be a journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
It's about experimenting with different expressions, playing with intonation, and gradually shaping a speaking style that feels authentic and comfortable for you.
This is making me excited to explore the more creative side of spoken English.
I love that.
To go beyond just getting the message across and really start playing with the language.
I love that. That's the spirit. And speaking of playfulness, let's dive into a topic that perfectly embodies that spirit. Storytelling.
Ooh, I love a good story, but how does storytelling fit into the picture of speaking English naturally?
Storytelling is like a linguistic gym for your spoken English.
Okay.
When you tell a story, you're naturally engaging all those muscles we've been talking about. Vocabulary, grammar, idioms, even nonverbal communication.
It's like a full-body workout for our language skills.
It is.
But I have to admit, I sometimes feel intimidated by the idea of storytelling in English. It seems like such a high-pressure situation.
I understand that feeling. But here's the secret. Storytelling isn't about perfection.
Okay.
It's about connection.
Right.
It's about sharing a piece of yourself with the world, engaging your listeners, and transporting them into your world.
So it's less about delivering a polished performance and more about creating a shared experience.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing is everyone has stories to tell. It could be a funny anecdote from your childhood, a memorable travel experience, or even a simple observation about daily life.
So it's about finding those nuggets of narrative gold in our everyday lives.
Precisely. And the more you practice storytelling, the more confident and fluent you'll become in expressing yourself in English.
Right.
It's like building a narrative muscle, one story at a time.
Okay, I'm starting to see the magic of storytelling. It's not just about entertaining others.
No.
It's about flexing our language muscles and finding our unique voice.
You got it. And as you embark on this storytelling adventure, Remember to have fun with it.
Yeah.
Experiment with different techniques. Play with your intonation. And don't be afraid to inject your personality into every word.
This is making me realize that speaking English naturally isn't just about reaching a destination. It's about enjoying the journey.
Well said, and I think that's a perfect note to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We've explored so many fascinating facets of spoken English, from the power of thinking in English to the art of storytelling.
I feel like we've been given a treasure map to fluency, and I can't wait to see what other hidden gems we uncover in the next part.
Me too.
Welcome back. I'm still kind of buzzing from our conversation about storytelling.
Yeah.
It's amazing how something as simple as sharing a story can unlock so much potential in our spoken English.
It's true. Stories have this incredible power to connect us, to transport us, and to really make language come alive.
Yeah.
But there's another layer to storytelling that we haven't touched on yet.
Okay.
The cultural aspect.
And it's interesting. Yeah, I've noticed that different cultures have different storytelling styles.
Right.
Some are more dramatic, some are more humorous, some are more subtle.
Exactly. And those cultural nuances can influence everything from the types of stories we tell to the way we structure them.
So how can we, as English language learners, become more aware of these cultural differences in storytelling?
It's all about expanding our cultural horizons.
Okay.
Immerse yourself in stories from various English-speaking cultures.
Right.
Watch films, read books, listen to podcasts. Pay attention to the themes, the humor, the pacing.
Right.
You'll start to notice those subtle variations that make each culture's storytelling style unique.
It's like developing a cultural ear for storytelling.
Yes.
But how do we go beyond just recognizing those differences and actually incorporate them into our own storytelling?
That's where the real fun begins.
Okay.
Think of it as adding spices to your storytelling dish.
Okay.
You can experiment with different cultural flavors, borrowing elements from various traditions.
So, for example, if I'm really drawn to the dry wit of British humor,
Yeah.
I could try incorporating that into my own storytelling style.
Exactly. Or if you're fascinated by the dramatic flair of Latin American storytelling, you could experiment with adding more emotion and imagery to your narratives.
It's like creating a fusion cuisine of storytelling, blending different cultural influences to create something unique and delicious.
That's a fantastic way to put it. And the beauty of this approach is that it allows you to develop a storytelling style that feels authentic to you, drawing inspiration from the cultures that resonate with your personality.
This is making me realize that speaking English naturally isn't just about adopting one standard way of speaking. It's about embracing the rich tapestry of cultures and styles that exist within the English-speaking world.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about celebrating diversity and finding your own unique voice within that tapestry.
I'm starting to see spoken English not as like a rigid set of rules, but as a vibrant, ever-evolving art form.
That's a beautiful way to think about it, and I think this perfectly encapsulates the essence of what we've been exploring in this deep dive. Speaking English naturally isn't about achieving some elusive state of perfection. It's about embracing the journey, the challenges, the discoveries, and the joy of connecting with others through language.
This has been such an eye-opening experience. I feel like I've been given a whole new perspective on spoken English.
Good.
But before we wrap up, I have one final question. We've talked about all these amazing strategies, but what advice would you give to someone who's feeling overwhelmed or discouraged on their language learning journey?
That's such an important question. Language learning can be a roller coaster ride of emotions, with moments of triumph and moments of frustration.
Yeah, for sure.
My advice would be this: be kind to yourself.
Okay.
Celebrate those small wins, embrace those stumbles as learning opportunities.
All right.
And remember that progress isn't always linear.
So it's about focusing on the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly. And remember that you're not alone on this journey.
Yeah.
There's a whole community of language learners out there, all navigating the same twists and turns. Connect with them, share your experiences, and support each other along the way.
That's such a powerful reminder. It's easy to get caught up in the individual pursuit of fluency, but ultimately language is about connection, about building bridges of understanding.
Beautifully said, and I think that's a perfect note to end on. To our listener, we applaud your dedication to this journey. Keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep embracing the joy of speaking English naturally.
And remember, the world is waiting to hear your story. Until next time, happy learning.